Hermeticism, often known as Hermeticism, refers to a philosophical ideology based mainly on the reputed teachings of Hermes Trismegistus. It comprises the legendary Hellenistic combination of the Greek God Hermes and the Egyptian God Thoth. These teachings can be found in the various texts assigned to Hermes, the Hermetica. These scripts were written over a longer period, circa 300 BCE to 1200 CE, and may differ materially in both content and depth. One of the most prominent contexts of the term refers to a particular subsection of Hermetic texts regarded as the philosophical Hermetica. The most noteworthy subgroup is the Corpus Hermeticum, an assemblage of 17 Greek Hermetic treatises recorded between circa 100 and 300 CE. To separate it from the ideologies influenced by the several Hermetic works of an entirely different era and origin, this specific ancient version of Hermetic philosophy is tagged as Hermeticism. Hermeticism is a more open-ended representation. What is Hermetics exactly? Many people are unaware of it. However, they are familiar with the term hermetically sealed. It's tough to put into words exactly what Hermetics does mean. It's a bit like attempting to define alchemy or mysticism, which is a tricky concept. The research and understanding of alchemy, magic, and astrology are known as Hermetic. The word Hermetic comes from the Greek word Herm and the Greek god Hermes, who was revered for his wisdom and intelligence. For the alchemical procedures of extraction and filtration, the term hermetically sealed signified the term airtight. With the rise of Christianity in the 2nd century CE, early Hermetic literature had emerged. It was centered on the Corpus Hermeticum, a collection of holy, mystical books. Some of the books in the Corpus Hermeticum feature esoteric teachings via exchanges between Pomandares and Hermes and Asclepius to his son Tat. The teachings include a wide range of philosophical concerns, stressing the existence of the soul and the fundamental constituents of the universe. The Emerald Tablet of Hermes Trismegistus is among the most amazing Hermetic works. Alexander the Great has unearthed the Emerald Tablet in a cave near Hebron. The three aspects of wisdom known as alchemy, astrology, and theurgy were carved on the tablet. For the accomplishment of the one thing's mysteries, truth without deception, absolute and most perfect, that which is beyond will be the same as which is underneath, and that which has been without is just the same as that which is inside. And just as everything comes from one through one's meditation, everything comes from this one thing through adjustments. For the execution of the one thing's marvels, truth without deception, absolute and most genuine, that which is above is identical as that which is beneath, and that which is devoid of is similar to that which is within. Everything comes from this one thing through this adaptation. Its father is the sun, its mother is the moon, the earth is its foster parent, and the wind nurtures its belly. It is the father of par excellence, or the culmination of the entire universe. If it is turned into earth, its power will integrate. With utter grace and much skill and intelligence, one will cleanse the earth from the fire, the delicacy from the supremacy. The oneness moves from the earth to heaven and returns to the earth, receiving both superiors' and inferiors' strength. Consequently, one thing has the entire world's splendor. Hence, let all confusion be removed. This is the most powerful of all forces, capable of overcoming all subtleties and piercing solid objects. The outturn is the creation of the world. As a result, the world is born, and all humans are excellent adaptations following this creation. In this way, Hermes Trismegistus is born, as he possesses the three components of global philosophy. It brings him to the end of his observations on the sun's mission. That which is beyond is similar to which is under, and that which is without is identical to that which is inside, is likely the most popular Hermetic quotation, attributed from the Emerald Tablet. It is the foundation of all Hermetic or supernatural activities, as it establishes a relationship between the microcosm, human, and the macrocosm, the cosmos. What goes on inside a human being is linked to what goes on outside him. People can discover themselves by studying the universe, and vice versa. In the universe, everything is related to everything else. As a result, magic, alchemy, and astrology are all conceivable. Hermetics is an oral custom as well. Even these days, esoteric teachings are passed down from educator to disciple. On the other hand, Hermetic educators may be challenging to come by. Introduction into Hermetics by Franz Barden is arguably the best literature for all practical knowledge of Hermetic principles. The psychological, philosophical, and practical ramifications of Hermes are thoroughly detailed in this text to assist the seeker in garnering self-knowledge and global awareness. Hermetic followers were initiated into Hermetic practices long ago. In everyday life, the disciples studied and applied Hermetic ideas. It's fascinating to observe how these concepts are implemented in practice. Magic, alchemy, and astrology are all considered ridiculous and superstitions by today's generation. However, many issues about the ultimate reality and consciousness have been raised in the realm of quantum physics. When examined attentively, the substance is not as solid as it seems. It is made up of millions of spinning atoms, protons and electrons traveling in a magnetosphere. If one looks closely enough, even tiny quantum components that alternate between a wave and a particle can be found. Human consciousness, it has been discovered, has an impact on these nanoparticles. There is a link between the observer and the observed, and between individual inner and exterior movements. Science will re-examine the ancient esoteric arts with time and see them in a new light. A few people have seen the implementation of Hermetic ideas in personal life. People have witnessed incredible things from materialization and elemental control to astral projection and exploration of the inner worlds. In their lives, several individuals have encountered miracles and magic. It's not fairy tales or storytellers' wild imaginations. Hermetics is a spiritual practice in which the world's rules are investigated and applied to the microcosm and macrocosm to achieve eventual self-realization. The inscription, "Know Thyself," was carved onto the forecourt of the Temple of Apollo at Delphi. This is where the Hermetic quest begins. According to Hermetic philosophy, the masses are frequently dragged along, influenced by their surroundings and becoming products. They may choose for the easier option, instead of making the necessary changes to realize their full potential. Hermetic teachings are compiled in the Kybalion. These similar ideas are based on Hermes Trismegistus' original interpretations. Enthusiasts can use the Kybalion as a master key to open the door to esoteric philosophy's foundational and elementary principles. Hermetic Principles, an appropriate run-through. The Greek god Hermes, also identified by his Roman name Mercury, is the root of Hermetics and Hermeticism. Hermes is one of the deities who is both interesting and diversified. He's also the most difficult to track down. That's why people refer to him as the liminal deity. Hermes is the god of the intersections, among other things, and one of his symbols is a rock delineating limits. Thus, liminal is an ideal phrase to describe him. Hermes is a communicator, a magician, a traveler's defender, a deceiver, an eternal guide, and a debater. Many of these assignments have something to do with limitations. Bridging the gap between the living and the dead, and his affiliation with transit and relaying messages for the other gods are relevant manifestations. He's also a master of persuasion and oration, though his words aren't always accurate in the natural context. He might be thought of as the deity of solicitation in this way. To return to the Platonic dialogues where Socrates distinguishes between pure philosophy and sophistry, Hermes appears to embody the latter. What are people to judge a god like Hermes, who appears to be at minimum morally questionable? Is he merely a source of amusement? Perhaps the ancient version of today's soap operas, in which some of the most entertaining characters are fringe villains? Or does he have a hidden significance? One can go to some of the Hermetic tradition's Gospels to find an answer to this question. Hermetic tradition is almost as enigmatic and vague as Hermes himself. Over the centuries, a plethora of mystery schools, cults, and contemporary occult systems have sprouted, all claiming to be heirs to the genuine Hermetic principles. Some say that their wisdom comes from Hermes Trismegistus, the real Hermes. This propagator is frequently depicted in antiquity, mostly common in Egypt, though occasionally Atlantis. He is sometimes regarded as the mentor of Moses. Similarly, he is also compared with Thoth, the Egyptian god. Some manuscripts existed in the ancient Christian era that recorded some Hermetic principles. Later on, these records were frequently misrepresented as being considerably older than they were. These works, known as the Corpus Hermeticum, mirrored late antiquity's synchronistic environment in cities like Alexandria. Various sources impacted them, including Christianity, paganism, Neoplatonism, and Gnosticism. Hermeticism had resurfaced throughout history, most notably during the Renaissance, when tarot, alchemy, and other widespread esoteric doctrines. Later, in the 19th century, cults like Theosophy and Rosicrucianism emerged in England, and to a lesser extent the United States, bringing with them a new wave of occult theories. The concept that the Hermetic doctrine was an impenetrable wall that could be traced back to the ancient era was popularized, at least to some degree, they were never major movements, by groups like the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. A short book called The Kybalion appeared in the early 20th century, written by somebody, or multiple persons, solely designated as 3 initiates. This text explains Hermeticism's mystical concepts, including the most renowned proclamation, "As above, so below." People can also detect an early prototype of ideas in this book, like the law of attraction. Hermeticism has received a new audience thanks to the New Age movement, albeit people nowadays are more likely to blend it with the precepts of other traditions. In some ways, it's appropriate, as Hermeticism evolved from eclecticism. It's not unintended if this, although simplified, description of Hermeticism comes across as casual and possibly skeptical. Researchers believe that the Hermetic tradition has enormous wisdom. The best way to exploit it is to approach all instructors, institutions, and dogmas with a high level of skepticism. Hermeticism could be considered as Western Taoism in this way. The first stanza of the Tao Te Ching, "The Tao that can be articulated is not the immortal Tao," is presumably familiar to anyone who has studied it. Hermeticism's wisdom necessitates a deeper exploration of Hermes's enigmatic nature. One must accept a reality in which truth and deception are frequently and utterly jumbled up. Aleister Crowley, one of the Hermetic tradition's masters, personified this concept. One can't take anything he says at face value because of his turbulent life and purposefully counterintuitive teachings. People can't, however, dismiss it as gibberish. In fact, one of his novels was titled The Book of Lies. Also, one may consider the yin-yang emblem, which comes from the Chinese wisdom of Taoism. It is commonly depicted as a circle divided into 2 halves, one black, one white, representing the yin and yang dualism, or positive and negative, male and female, etc. Another feature of the symbol is that it usually contains a black dot in the white half, and vice versa. It means that everything has a component of its polar opposite. This is fully congruent with Hermetic doctrines, as people can understand through the Kybalion text. There are tricksters in many traditions. The Norse god Loki and the Native American coyote are 2 well-known examples. These characters play an important role in the myths in which they reside. They seem to suggest that life itself is not always what it seems, and that the belief in purity, such as pure truth or pure falsehood, is itself a myth. Hermes, or Mercury, is often associated with both the fool and the magician, both charlatans in their own ways, of the tarot. So if one studies the Hermetic tradition, they need to be both skeptical and open-minded. Much of what individuals read may not be true at all. For example, there is no evidence that Hermes Trismegistus ever lived, yet his teachings may contain great wisdom all the same. The 7 Hermetic Principles Leading to Self-Mastery. It is for sure that the Corpus Hermetic's 7 Hermetic laws have been unearthed in part from the Nag Hammadi library during the 4th century AD in Egypt, as well as in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, indicating a commonality of a particular genre. Following are some abridged accounts of the Hermetic principles. The principle of mentalism. The premise that all is mind is embodied in this fundamental principle. It implies that the universe is cognitive on a deep and underlying dimension. All existence, substance, and energy in the material world conceive an endless, universal, and eternal mind. Also, it transpires that all things and events are interwoven. They all dwell within the mind of the All, as it is referred to, and hence are subject to the laws of creativity. For the sake of the experiment, this mental universe could be described as a limitless intellectual domain, or even the essence of awareness itself. Triggering a thinking discourse is the essence that coincides with the human thought process. The law of correspondence. This theory supports the notion that the laws and manifestations of multiple planes that emerge as living protocols constantly correspond. Understanding this law helps one to discern the pattern and shadowy aspect of what is in between, to derive hidden solutions to recurring issues by analyzing the existence of a layer above and below the situation. Of course, people are confined to the bandwidths of visible light and audible sound, so realms and happenings are beyond human understanding. However, by seeing the patterns that appear in the human dimension, one can infer what may exist in higher and lower orders of magnitude. The law of vibration. The facts of nothing settles, everything else is in movement, and everything vibrates are embodied in this doctrine. It demonstrates that energy, matter, and even spirits are different vibrational frequencies. Frequency is a typical case wherein the 7 octaves of music, retuned with 44 octaves, suddenly transform into the visible spectrum of light traversing through the buzz pitch of ultrasound, hypersound, ether, insects, plasma, and even octaves of heat. The vibrations keep the exact correlation as they switch manifestation, with the only variation being in ether and measurement as frequencies move up the electromagnetic field. The principle of polarity. The reality that everything has its set of opposites, everything seems to have 2 poles, and lives in a condition of duality, are embodied in the 4th principle. The exact essence of this idea, on the other hand, is that opposites are the same in degree. It emphasizes that everything has 2 poles, and that opposites are essentially just 2 extremes of the same entity, with only a variation in intensity. One prominent example is hot and cold, which are both temperatures that differ only in degree. Also, there is no obvious point at which hot ceases being hot and becomes cold, and vice versa, without absolutes on any end. The reality that everything has its set of opposites, everything seems to have 2 poles, and lives in a condition of duality, are embodied in the 4th principle. Conversely, the exact essence of this idea is that opposites are identical, just in degree. It emphasizes that everything has 2 poles, and that opposites are essentially just 2 extremes of the same entity, with only a variation in intensity. The law of rhythm. The principle of rhythm states that the pendulum swings between the opposite poles of the principle of polarity. Everything lives in a regulated motion, from here to there, going in and out, shifting back and forth, the rise and fall of the waves, ebbing and flowing, and never wholly resting. It's never the same twice, and it's constantly evolving. The sequences of life and death, creation and destruction, rise and fall, and of course the mental processes, are all governed by this principle. One can start using the principle of rhythm to his advantage by polarizing himself to the degree he wishes once he is in tune with it and grasps that every mental condition is in rhythm, ebbing and flowing. Then, by becoming aware of this concept and its development, one can hold himself there to prevent the pendulum from swinging too far across. The principle of cause and effect. This concept expresses the idea that there is a cause for every effect, and an effect for every cause. That is to say, nothing just happens for a motive, and there is no such criterion as a chance. Higher planes dominate lower planes as per the principle of correspondence, and nothing defines the principle of cause and effect. Nothing happens in a vacuum. The most empowering use of this theory is to choose to transcend beyond the level of thought people are now on and become their own cause, rather than just an effect of others and the conditions they find themselves in. Rather than reacting to circumstances, one should take the initiative. The gender principle. This principle expresses the idea that everything contains both masculine and feminine aspects. There is not just sex on all planes, but there is also the innovation of all things. It suggests that both masculine and feminine exist on physical, mental, and spiritual planes, as per the law of correspondence. Gender plays a part in all creation, reproduction, and regeneration aspects. Nothing can exist without the application of this paradigm. The masculine force that propels advancement is penetrative, progressive, assertive, dominating, and explorative. The feminine is the responsive, holy, valued, and protective force that upholds tradition. It acknowledges that what matters most while nurturing what is most vital to human value and existence. Some distinct Hermetic terms. Alchemy, functioning of the sun. Alchemy is more than just converting lead into gold. It is rather a study of the spiritual structure or life of substance and material existence, using the secrets of birth, death, and resurrection as a starting point. Chemical extraction and fermentation, among other activities, are parts of these secrets that, when applied, accelerate nature's processes to complete a natural organism. The magnum opus has been completed with this perfection. Astrology, functioning of the stars. Zoroaster, according to Hermes, uncovered and imparted the teachings of astrology, a component of the wisdom of the entire universe. The orbits of the planets are likely to have inferences beyond the physical laws in Hermetic philosophy, and to have metaphorical worth as symbols in the mind of the All, or God. Astrology impacts the earth, but it does not mandate human behavior, and wisdom comes from understanding these influences and the methods to deal with them. Theurgy, God's functioning. There are two kinds of magic. Each utterly contradicts the other. The first is Goetia, Greek O, which is dark magic based on a pact with demonic spirits. The second is Theurgy, which is divine alchemy based on a collaboration with divine spirits such as angels and gods. Theurgy is the process model of the Hermetic technique of alchemy, which corresponds to the science or art of divine works. Alchemy is also considered the key to Theurgy, which has its ultimate objective to unite with the higher equivalents that lead to the achievement of divine consciousness. As above, so below. As above, so below, as it would seem in the most widely circulated medieval Latin version, is a popular contemporary paraphrase of the second verse of the Emerald Tablet. It is a compressed and cryptic text about Hermes Trismegistus, and was first accredited to a late 8th or early 9th century Arabic source. It appropriately asserts that what is above is similar to what is below, and that what is below is akin to what is above. Prisca Theologia. Hermeticists subscribe to a Prisca Theologia, or the belief that a single genuine theology prevails in all religions. It was previously awarded to man in antiquity by the Almighty. Christians used Hermetic principles to meet their own ends to highlight the truth of the Prisca Theologia concept. As per this narrative, Hermes Trismegistus was either a compatriot of Moses or the third in a series of stalwarts named Hermes, including Enoch, Noah, and the Egyptian priest-king recognized as Hermes Trismegistus. Reincarnation. In Hermetic literature, reincarnation is dually referenced. Hermes Trismegistus questioned how many incarnations, how many legions of devils, how many sequences of repetition and cycles of the constellations must people traverse before they approach the One alone. Cosmogony. In the first volume of the Corpus Hermeticum, God reveals to Hermes a creation myth. It all starts when God generates the primordial matter that will make up the universe through an act of will. God ideally separates the four aspects from primal matter: earth, air, water, and fire. The elements are then organized into the seven heavens by God, which are the spheres of the Sun, the Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. They travel in circles and dominate density. The word, logos, then emerges from the four mindless elements that manifest. The seven heavens revolve due to nous actions, and species without speech emerge from them. The earth is subsequently isolated from the ocean, and animals, apart from humans, are born. God then creates an androgynous man and hands him over to humankind in general. Presence of good and evil. In Book 9 of the Corpus Hermeticum, Hermes argues that nous, reason and understanding, can produce good or evil, based on whether one's views come from God or Satan. Good comes from God, but evil comes from Satan. Fornication, murder, aggression against one's parent, sacrilege, ungodliness, strangling, and all other demonic activities are among the horrors perpetrated by demons. It demonstrates that Hermeticism encompasses a moral sensibility. The term good is, nevertheless, strictly defined. It's only allowed to mention God. Only God, in the context of the nous, is devoid of evil. Men cannot be virtuous because they are absorbed by their physical instincts and are unaware of the supreme authority. Because God is a generative force, one must produce and accomplish something beneficial in one's life. A person becomes sterile if he does not create anything, i.e., unable to obtain his goal. Man's downfall. The man carefully studied nous creation and was given control over all of the creation completed by God. The man then ascended above the roots of the spheres to have a better perspective of creation. He then revealed the cosmic shape to nature. Nature fell in love with the surroundings, and man became affectionate with nature after seeing its reflection in the river and growing a desire to live. Man became one with nature and was subject to its restrictions, such as sexuality and relaxation, almost immediately. As a result of losing the word, man became silent and dual. He became mortal in the flesh, but immortal in spirit, and enjoyed command over all existence, yet vulnerable to destiny. God as the All. The ultimate truth is known by numerous titles in the philosophical Hermetica, including God, Lord, Father, the Creator, Mind, Nous, the All, the One, etc. The Hermetic perspective of divinity is unique in that it is both the All, Greek topan, and the originator of them all. All created things pre-exist in God, and God is the essence of the universe, being both the material from which it continues and the guiding principle through which it orders. However, the things and the entire universe were both created by God. Eventually, God is both transcendent, as the maker of the universe, and immanent, as the creator of the universe. These notions are strongly tied to the Stoics' cosmotheological beliefs. The importance of Hermetic principles. The Hermetic heritage refers to the non-lineage of Gnosticism, which is the term for a host of ancient religious ideologies and systems dating back to the 1st and 2nd centuries A.D. The Corpus Hermetica, which is made up of letters from a revered teacher, Hermes Trismegistus, attempting to enlighten his followers. It is the only extant Hermeticism writing. After ancient antiquity, these letters were extinct in the Western world, but they were ultimately preserved in Byzantine libraries. The writings were recovered and translated into Latin by the court of Cosimo de' Medici and several other Renaissance artists in the 15th century. These letters were so powerful at the time that they worked as a starting point for the upsurge of the Renaissance, in tandem with Italian thinking and culture. These eternal concepts were revived by the Freemasons and appeared in the teachings of the American revolutionaries, who were inspired by this surge of innovation. But what is the significance of this philosophy? As a Gnostic tradition, Hermeticism is a collection of ideas and systems centered on the quest of Gnosis, or empirical knowledge relating to spiritual secrets. The Gnostics, and later Hermeticists, were rebellious in thinking in a historical reality where all mainstream religions had barriers against spiritual practices. They took matters into their hands in their hunt for mysticism, developing a method of thought process regarding the universe that allowed them to speak with and directly experience what they referred to as a higher visionary reality. Expert of all arts and sciences, flawless in all professions, sovereign of the three worlds, secretary to the gods, and curator of the books of life, Thoth Hermes Trismegistus, the 3 times best, the original intelligencer, was regarded as the personification of the universal mind, accredited by the ancient Egyptians. While it is pretty likely that a great philosopher and educator by the title of Hermes existed, it is impossible to distinguish the historical figure from the multitude of legends that try to link him to the cosmic principle of thought. Hermes Trismegistus is the legendary originator of both the Emerald Tablet and the Corpus Hermeticum, and one of those historical figures who merged myth with reality. The scriptor Hermes Trismegistus was a hybrid of the Egyptian god Thoth and the Greek god Hermes, who were deities of writing and alchemy in their own traditions. Hermes was associated with a multitude of highly regarded texts from both Egypt and Greece, implying that the man shared a common cultural norm with both nations. While the Italian Renaissance thought Hermes was an Egyptian priest, the Corpus Hermetica was probably prompted by a group of unidentified Platonistic and Stoic Greek citizens. All that is certain is that the Corpus Hermetic's 7 Hermetic laws had been unearthed in part at the Nag Hammadi Library in 4th century Egypt A.D., and the Emerald Tablets of Thoth indicating a recurring theme of some genre. Besides, there's no way of knowing whether Hermes existed, and whether the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian god Thoth symbolized a shared cultural relationship between ancient Greece and Egypt. What it signifies to exist genuinely will alter, especially if the teachings of the 3 times great mystic are sincerely followed. One can be confident that these Hermetic teachings, whatever their creator might have foreseen, were precious to the legacy they carry. They operate as catalysts for creative rebirth, revolutions, and cultural regeneration any time they resurface in modern culture. These 7 laws are among the most ancient and influential schools of thought, and they will expand vistas, broaden horizons, and assist one in the pursuit of a better, brighter, more meaningful, and longer lifespan, as much today as they had been before. People should remember that these concepts were penned thousands of years ago, before contemporary science could reason their remarkably precise and esoteric conclusions. The User Guide for Hermetic Gnosis. Each Hermetic principle may be found in nature and has immediate implications for mental, moral, and spiritual well-being. They provide individuals with a map of uncharted land both within and outside. Knowing these doctrines and how they interact allows one to better understand specific human patterns, like what influences them, and how they may use these rules and their constraints to govern their lives. Hermeticism's 7 principles educate people on interacting with the mental universe using human brains. All dreamers envision a domain of stronger desire than their ordinary course, as well as the primordial and gross stuff from which they originate. Whether it's Plato's realm of manifestations, a Christian paradise, the New Age astral plane, or the esoteric concept of a multidimensional space, these precepts help people gauge the anomalies of the planes above and below them, and how the intervening trends can illuminate what humans can't see without trying to label them. Also, how individuals can fine-tune their own vibrations and enjoy the simplicity of being in sync with energies that naturally exist at higher frequencies. Choosing the polarity humans want to experience the most is critical to understand and have lots of options. To stay where they want, they can do it by knowing how to surpass rhythm's pendulum swing. Realizing that people are constantly influenced, that nothing happens to them by random, and that they can select whatever impacts they want. To reap the benefits of these principles, people must seek a balance of masculine and feminine energies inside themselves. It will build their ideal worlds and wield this power without straying too far from the middle road. Choosing the polarity for humans to want to experience the most is critical to understand, and they have many good options. They can do it by knowing how to surpass rhythm's pendulum swing, to stay where they want. Realizing that people are constantly influenced, that nothing happens to them by random, and can select whatever impacts they want to have. To reap the benefits of all these principles, people must seek a balance of masculine and feminine energies inside themselves. It will build their ideal worlds and wield this power without straying too far from the middle road. The philosophers of Greece, the priests and pharaohs of Egypt, the artists and innovators of the Italian Renaissance, and the revolutionaries and statesmen of the United States of America have all used these precepts to attain their respective goals. These are the principles of Gnosticism. These concepts are meaningless in and of themselves, but they can help achieve any target one has set when cleverly used. To truly comprehend them, one must first experience them. Believing in individual ability to change initiates the transformation of human thoughts and lives. It does, however, necessitate individual willpower. People can increase their real substance to be more in line with what they desire by modifying their inner vibration, just as altering the frequency at which matter vibrates can transform what matter becomes. The Emerald Tablet of Hermes began to appear in alchemical libraries across Europe in the 12th century. However, the tablet's origins and the material it held may be traced back to ancient Egypt, when Hermes Trismegistus, also called the Scribe of the Gods, inscribed universal principles that some think to hold the mysteries of the universe. Hermes, the originator of the 7 Hermetic principles, is shrouded in legend. Some claim he lived around the same time as Abraham in the Bible. Most followers believe Abraham got a lot of his spiritual knowledge from Hermes. Others claim he lived for 300 years and had many physical incarnations during that time. Many disciples believe he is Thoth, the Egyptian god of writing. The hypothesis of everything, which all scientists worldwide are striving toward, has existed since ancient times. It can be found in a book called Divine Science. It is known as Hermes Trismegistus's 7 Hermetic Principles, or Thrice Greatest. In the most accurate, comprehensive, and simple explanations, the 7 principles discuss the nature of all existence. The Kybalion, composed of 3 initiates, presently contains the 7 Hermetic principles and Hermetic philosophy. The Kybalion is the key component of knowledge, which opens all of the doors of wisdom. The light of understanding illuminates all cognitive channels. Above all other source knowledge, it is considered the supreme source knowledge. It is the most powerful of all nuclei. The foundations of all principles are contained in it. The 7 Hermetic principles, which underpin the entire Hermetic doctrine, are as under: the mentalism principle. Mind is everything, and it is universal. The law of correspondence. As above, so below, and vice versa. The law of vibration. Nothing stands still. Everything flows and vibrates. The polarity principle. Everything is dual. Every element has poles. Everything has its pair opposites. Like and unlike are similar. Opposites are identical in nature, but dissimilar in degree. Extremes converge. All realities are half-truths. All contradictions can be harmonized. The law of rhythm. Everything moves in and out. Every particle has its tides. Everything rises and falls. The swinging of pendulum reflects in everything. The proportion of the right swing is the degree of the left swing. Rhythm always has a balancing act. The law of cause and effect. Every cause does have its effect. Every effect in turn has its cause. Everything transpires as per law. Coincidence is simply a name for unacknowledged law. There are numerous planes of correlation, but nothing defies the law. The law of gender. Gender is present everywhere. Everything has both masculine and feminine precept. Gender manifests on all dimensions. No aspect of the world's occult doctrines has been more closely monitored than the remnants of the Hermetic teachings that have trickled down to modern civilization over time, since the creator Hermes Trismegistus' lifetime. The phrase occult refers to something that is veiled or concealed. Because it is the most potent type of information in the universe, it is kept secret and is difficult to reveal. Except for the ears of discernment, wisdom's lips are locked. A wise guy keeps his information hidden. It is only disclosed to those who are prepared to wield such influence. In most cases, the esoteric concepts are disguised in plain sight. They are present in the proper functioning of nature, humanity, and the universe for everyone to recognize and realize. The most effective source of information is secret knowledge. It's all about comprehending what's going on and how things work. Power comes from understanding. The devil takes the most potent knowledge of the universe and links himself with it to deprive the children of light of their potential. He persuades the church to label such learning as satanic, to discourage others from using it. As a result, he maintains as much ignorance and impotence in the world as possible.